Datalog GM. Subject Matter Foundation member, God Mode. God Mode was a 35-foot-tall giant-class human who worked for the Foundation as a super soldier. He was age 45 and had brown hair and eyes, with white skin, and he had a slightly boastful personality. He was created by the Foundation to be our best super soldier and to further help overcome the Origin planet's inhabitants, and which he did extremely well at being the best super soldier we had, as he was the strongest a human had ever reached at the time, aside from the Founders. The way we made God Mode so powerful, aside from giving him many different chemicals, DNA altering of the embryo he came from, intense training since aged 10, and of course the fact he was a giant, was because when scouts went into caves, we found evidence of these strange multi-winged creatures, which seemed to have fought Origin 28. We found out that these were lower members of a very high-up being, which had some clashes in the past with the Origins known as Divinity Alt, large celestial angel-like beings whose goal is to liberate the entire universe and multiverse, and spread their beliefs to make a pure kingdom. They are among a few other beings from the omnipotent Blue, who seem to almost be in a neck-to-neck rivalry with each other, and during those times, some of them dropped Divinity Alt artifacts that had just been left behind, never bothered to be retrieved. We found one of these and decided to try to see if we can transfer any of this to any soldiers, so we researched and practiced. And then, we molded the crest. The crest was a large yellow shoulder gear that tended to fade into white randomly. We put this on God Mode, or, as before he was called, Rhinocoles. And when we put this on, magic happened. His body started to glow yellow, and 4 tendrils from each side of the crest stretched out, stabbing his arms. Then a large amount of this fading yellow and white fabric started to engulf Rhinocoles' whole body. When it got to his head, a large black diamond-shaped eye was there replacing his former 2 eyes. Then, the crest started to grow 4 eyes on them, and 9 eyes started to form along Rhinocoles' chest and belly. Each pupil had a different shape, and the ones on the crest went in a pattern. Then, boots started to form, which had these wing things on them, and grew an eye. He started to shake a bit, and was glowing. But then he stopped shaking. And then, God Mode was made. This was an incredible discovery, and we immediately started training God Mode, and see what he can achieve from this crest. Powers. God Mode was quite a specimen, as once he got this crest he was given super strength, super speed, flight, the power of pyrokinesis and heliokinesis, the ability to transfer a surge of his strength to literally make things evaporate due to taking too much power. And with the suit, it was extremely durable, more durable than ruined metal, which is 30 billion times stronger than steel, and the 3rd strongest metal in the universe so far. But where his power really shines is his punches and his stomping moves. As we found, God Mode can create as much force from a punch to be equal to a 370-meter asteroid impact, causing an absurdly high amount of force, and a shockwave that breaks down trees and rocks in the radius. While with the stump, he learned how to use a certain type of move where the impact heats up the ground underneath, allowing it to crack up to the surface and blast out large chunks of molten rocks. God Mode had a role of being one of our super soldiers we used to go fight some of the powerful beings of the Origin Forest, which he displayed to be capable of dispatching wildlife, monsters, spirits, entities, demons. He killed a demigod and had won a few fights with other higher-up beings, and because of all of these battles, we believed he was strong enough to even fight titans. We never tried though. And to be fair, it might have gone super bad, but aside from being our best soldier, he also was the leader of the Soup Squad for B, which had 10 other members with their own useful powers, though most of them got shadowed by God Mode's sheer power. And we even decided to request regular DNA samples off him, in case anything happened to him, or to further enchant the future generations. Though, today, we talk about an incident. which costed the life of 5 different troops, including Soup Squad for B.
Good evening, sir. I am here to read what went down in the Red Skull incident, as you need to know this for your next mission. It was around 6:43 p.m. when we found Mary in an area seemingly without Origin 28 in sight, so we called for backup. We got 200 men out there on the ground, divided into groups of 2, so each troop had 100 members. Group A came in from the front with a chain tractor. Each troop was fully geared up with Originic steel bullets, missiles, rockets, molten bullets, and other powerful long-range weapons so it could, at the bare minimum, distract Skullmare in case he comes. Group B came with an FF mech, fire flea, and plasma tripods. When they got there, Mary was in deep distress and started to run deeper into the woods. We followed close behind her, trying to capture her, but then the monster came from behind an all-bark tree. Skullmare walked calmly towards Mary, as if there was not a group of 200 armed men and heavily armored vehicles with destructive weapons aimed at him. But the moment Mary ran under Skullmare and behind his hind leg, his mood started to change. He started to stand his ground, tapping on the floor 3 times with his front hoof, while constantly making this bone-cracking sounds as it makes any slight movement. This was a warning display. And one. We should have heeded too. We decided to call for more backup. We got 100 more men coming from behind Skullmare, and they bought a barrage tank and an armored battle train with a solar cannon attachment. And we called for military aircrafts on the way. We had 30 OFF Blackbirds and 2 FOC Fallout carriers flying towards the area. We had 2 mini-beam satellites on standby because we needed Mary alive. And Mary was right under Skullmare. But when more people came, Skullmare was starting to become territorial, lowering his head and swaying it from side to side. Meanwhile, that was happening. The Soup Squad of 4B was on their way, and the first one to arrive was Blade Runner. He wanted to end this by getting Mary as fast as possible. Using his super speed, he ran at a speed of 850,000 miles per second to get to the location and did not stop running towards Mary. His speed was not effective at achieving this goal, however, and then, the start of the onslaught began. As Blade Runner got close to Mary, Origin 28 could sense him coming toward him. Out of his mouth came massive chains with harpoons on the end of them, one of them directly striking him in the chest. None of the troops saw this coming because Blade Runner was moving so fast he was basically invisible to the naked eye. And then, we opened fire at Origin 28 as Blade Runner was being swayed around by the chains, still struggling. We all had to aim for his upper body to avoid killing Mary, peppering him with all we had, while the Air Force started to pre-fire from a distance, getting ready to cause massive destruction. In response to this, Origin 28 made more chains, and they started to whip around, making large indents, if not straight up crushing some of the machinery. He also used these chains to wrap around or impale more of the men's, and then when Blade Runner threw a bomb at Skullmare's face, we all watched in horror as he got dragged towards Origin 28's mouth. And the only thing we could compare what happened to him was like the Byford Dolphin incident of 1983, almost 2 million years ago. We watched as Blade Runner got sucked into Origin 28's throat, getting every part of his body crushed finely as he got sucked in within a second. This was a gruesome sight, and even Mary got scared of watching this go down. But Blade Runner would not be the last of them to experience this fate. But it was most likely the quickest death provided. 2 by 2, men kept getting snagged by the chains and towards Skullmare, the forest being deafened by screams, gunfiring, and the sound of bones and flesh being crushed. As he got around 50 men killed by this method, we noticed Mary getting tossed around by the shockwaves of our weapons. So we decided to aim for the ground. This may hurt her, but she would survive with bruising and slight fractures. And in doing this, Mary got tossed around and up in front of Skullmare. This put Skullmare into a state of panic, and he reared up on his hind legs and stomped down over Mary, trying to block her from us. He flailed his front legs around, kicking some of the troops that ran towards Mary, pulverizing them on impact. Then, we watched as chains and bones burst from the ground, tangling, crushing, and whacking us away. Though these were minor to what we've seen him do before, but this might have been because he did not want to risk putting Mary in danger. And all of this chaos put us down to 134 men left standing on the ground. Then, the dead zone started to kick in. as spores from his attacks started to bloom. These got 2 of our troop members, and then it made us have to focus on them as well. The breaching 28 fungus burst from the troops' face and body, making them produce the spores, and they became zombie-like. And as this happened, more of these black with white dot infected things came out of the ground around Skull Mare, running towards the troops to kill them, and some even blocking Mary from us. We started losing a lot of men, but then 3 of the other Soup Squad members came and started to burn these infected down. These 3 were no less safe than the others, but they tried distracting Origin 28 by firing lasers at his face, while flying around in circles at high speed. While they did this, the OF Blackbirds started to blast Origin 28's back with tracking plasma shells, causing massive shockwaves that made the ground shake. Origin 28 was starting to feel pain from these weapons and started to swat his tail around, breaking down an orebark tree like nothing, while one unlucky soldier got trapped in his tail, getting crushed by the hairs of his tail, while Mary was just getting tossed left and right by the shockwaves. But some of the infected still stayed by her side, and some would replace others that got destroyed by us. This got extremely annoying for us, and we commanded one of the 3 to go after Mary. 2 of them flew towards her at the same time, but in doing that, they allowed Origin 28 to focus on one individual, that being Blue Light. Blue Light was constantly flying around Origin 28's face and would swoop in to laser him in the eye sockets. So he waited for her to do one last swoop. When she swooped down, Origin 28 opened his mouth and made a suction by inhaling the air, making Blue Light fight for her life. She called for help, and then UV came to try pull her out of the suction, but it was no use as it ended up costing them both their lives. UV tried to hold on to Blue Light, but UV ended up getting dragged with her. Both having the same fate as Blade Runner, we commanded the men to fire everything they had at the beast, and the last of the 3 that came tried to grab Mary, but ended up getting stepped on by Origin 28. Mary was having a panic attack next to the crushed Soup member, which nobody blamed her. After this, 5 more members of the Soup Squad appeared, trying to distract Origin 28 long enough. To put this short for you, Thorns got a leg and arm torn off by a skeleton hand, and then had his head punched in. Echo got smashed into a very sharp branch of an orebark tree. Willow got kicked by Origin 28's back, hoof, and Gracie got mobbed by the infected. We also had heavy losses with the Air Force, as Origin 28 had come up with 2 ways to counter them. He called for some of the infected things to deal with them, and out of the bunch, a few bird-like creatures came out, and what they did is deliberately fly into the plane's engine and force the planes to crash. The other way he dealt with them was to use the chains and catch any of them, crushing and pulling them to the ground if caught. The last 2 Soup members left were Admin and Godmode. Admin was on the ground, trying to grab Mary, though he was struggling because he was getting body blocked by the infected. All of the ground force had been killed by now, and only one OF Blackbird and an FOC remained in the air. Origin 28 started to head towards Admin, getting ready to slam his head against him. But then, out of the skies, a massive ball of fire launched towards Origin 28 super speeds. Instead of dodging it, Origin 28 commanded the infected to shield Mary. The infected merged together into this massive mass and went in front of Mary. Then, Origin 28 got hit by a force so hard it knocked his head into a different direction. A massive heat blast had covered the area, smacking the infected mass hard and setting it on fire. Mary was bumped and had slight burns. Following that, a second one happened, and the infected mass started to get engulfed by flames. When a third impact was heard, the mass threw Mary away before it got to them. The heat was greatly reduced, and the mass got turned to ash, but Mary got hit by it, being blown away by the impact, getting cut by a flying rock, and landed a few meters away from Origin 28. However, Admin was not so lucky, as from the blast, a massive orebark tree hit him at super speed, crushing him under it. When the orange haze faded, Godmode was seen walking through the fire and heading towards Mary. Godmode right hand had a bone sticking out due to punching Origin 28's head. Origin 28 was slightly dazed, as he was looking around at the portion of the forest getting burnt. Then Godmode tried to pick Mary up, but, in doing so, he accidentally cracked one of her ribs. Mary made a noise out of pain. And then, everything went quiet. the crackling of the fire, the ringing from the blast. Every single sound went quiet. Godmode felt a heavy amount of dread. He slowly turned around and saw Origin 28 staring at him. He slowly raised his head up and started to walk towards him until he was a feet away. Origin 28 was staring deep into Godmode's eye. Then his eyes slowly moved towards Mary, struggling to breathe. The last two planes were still firing at Origin 28. But he did not even flinch. The last two planes started to suddenly get crushed by thin air. Godmode was unable to move. And then, all footage went blank. All we could hear was the audio of screaming. The sound of something getting crunched, slowly, like a car under a car crusher, and then the sound similar to something getting ripped. It then ended with a loud noise from Origin 28. When we came back to the area, we found Rinna Coles dead. It seemed the suit provided enough protection from a single bite. Plus, the crest added an extra layer of defense. But it seemed Origin 28 started to bite harder and harder, slowly crushing the suit and shattering the crest. And for the ripping sound, that was him getting torn in half. When we found Ryan Cole's body, his upper body was missing, and only a few fragments of the crest remained. This was a massive loss for the Foundation, as we spent so many years training him. But all hope is not lost, as we had DNA from Godmode, and we hope we can use it to make a successful clone or successor to him. And as we progress further to trying to advance, our wonders to why Skullmare cares so much about Mary is a mystery. We wonder whether or not Skullmare is doing this because he wants to adopt her, whether he knows what we are going to do to her, or maybe it's a deeper reason that could backtrack to his backstory. Post-Origin.